Loud shouts echoed through the narrow streets of Willow Creek as Lily Ainsworth ran for her life, her heart hammering against her ribs like a blacksmith's anvil. The year was 1878, and tonight, under the silver light of a full moon, Lily had decided she would no longer be a prisoner in her own town. The hem of her dress was caked with mud, her auburn hair falling loose from its pins as she fled from the angry mob led by Sheriff Thornton. Behind her, lanterns bobbed in the darkness like fireflies, their glow illuminating hate-filled faces as they called her name. There she is. A voice bellowed, "Get the witch." Lily wasn't a witch, far from it. She was simply a 22-year-old woman who had refused the sheriff's unwanted advances and paid the price when he found a convenient scapegoat for the mysterious illness affecting the town's livestock. In a place where superstition ran as deep as the nearby Gold River, it hadn't taken much to turn the townsfolk against her. Her lungs burned as she pushed beyond the town limits, the vast expanse of the western frontier stretching before her. Freedom beckoned, but so did danger. A woman alone in the wild had little chance of survival, yet staying meant certain death. The distant howl of a wolf sent shivers down her spine as she stumbled through the darkness, guided only by moonlight. Hours passed as she trudged across the open plains, her body growing weaker with each step. Just when her legs threatened to give out, she spotted a lone barn standing sentinel on the horizon, its weathered silhouette a beacon of hope in the endless night. With renewed determination, Lily staggered toward the structure, praying it would provide temporary sanctuary from both her pursuers and the wilderness. As she drew closer, she could make out a modest homestead nearby, a single-story cabin with a thin trail of smoke rising from its chimney. Someone was home. The realization both terrified and relieved her. Opting for caution, Lily crept toward the barn instead of the house. Its large double doors were secured with a simple wooden latch, which she lifted with trembling fingers. The hinges creaked as she slipped inside, and the musty scent of hay and animals enveloped her. Moonlight filtered through the gaps in the wooden slats, revealing stalls occupied by two horses that whickered softly at the intrusion. Lily pressed a finger to her lips, as if the animals might understand her plea for silence, then scrambled up a ladder to the hayloft. There, she burrowed into the sweet-smelling hay, creating a nest where she could hide and rest her exhausted body. Sleep came swiftly, dragging her into blessed unconsciousness, despite the scratchy hay and her fear of discovery. The breaking dawn painted the eastern sky with watercolor hues when Lily was jolted awake by the sound of the barn doors opening. She froze, hardly daring to breathe as heavy footsteps moved across the dirt floor below. A deep voice hummed a melody she didn't recognize, a man's voice, rich and melodious. "Easy there, midnight," the voice soothed. "Breakfast is coming." Lily's stomach chose that moment to betray her with a loud growl. She clamped a hand over her mouth, but it was too late. The humming stopped abruptly. "Who's there?" the man called out, his tone shifting from gentle to guarded. "Show yourself." Lily remained still, hoping against hope that he might think it was just a barn rat or his imagination, but the man was no fool. "I know someone's up there," he insisted, his voice firm but not threatening. "I'm coming up and I've got a rifle. Best you speak up now." With her heart in her throat, Lily sat up, hay falling from her hair and clothes. "Please," she called down, her voice raspy from thirst and fear. "I mean no harm." There was a moment of silence before the man responded. "Come down where I can see you." Lily hesitated, then slowly made her way to the ladder. Each rung felt like a step toward her fate. Would he turn her in to the sheriff? The possibility made her limbs heavy with dread, but she had no choice. She descended carefully, feeling the man's eyes on her the entire time. When her feet finally touched the ground, she turned to face her discoverer. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-bronzed skin that spoke of long days working outdoors. His dark hair was slightly too long, curling at the nape of his neck, and his face was adorned with several days' worth of stubble. But it was his eyes that captured Lily's attention, the color of a summer storm, gray-blue and intense as they assessed her. He wore simple clothes, a faded blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing strong forearms, well-worn denim pants, and scuffed leather boots. A wide-brimmed hat hung from a peg on the wall behind him, and true to his word, a Winchester rifle rested in his hands, not aimed at her, but ready if needed. "You're a long way from anywhere, miss," he observed, his gaze taking in her disheveled appearance. Lily swallowed hard, acutely aware of how she must look, dress torn and dirty, hair wild, fear etched into every line of her face. "I had nowhere else to go," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The man studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, he propped his rifle against a nearby stall and crossed his arms. "You running from something or someone?" he asked bluntly. Lily hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. This man could be her salvation or her executioner, depending on where his loyalties lay. "Yes," she finally admitted, seeing no point in lying when the truth was written all over her. He nodded slowly, as if her answer confirmed a suspicion. The law in Willow Creek is corrupt," she replied, a flash of anger giving her courage. "I'm innocent of any real crime." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Most folks who find themselves in barns that don't belong to them say the same." Lily squared her shoulders, dignity rising through her exhaustion. "If you're going to turn me in, sir, I ask only for a drink of water first." The man's expression softened slightly. He reached for a canteen hanging on a nearby post and offered it to her. Lily accepted it gratefully, taking several long swallows of the cool water within. "I'm Vincent Kane," he said as she drank. "This is my land you're standing on." She lowered the canteen, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. "Lily Ainsworth," she replied, then immediately regretted giving her real name. Vincent seemed to read her thoughts. "Don't worry, Miss Ainsworth. Willow Creek is a good 30 miles from here. Whatever trouble you're in there hasn't reached my doorstep yet." Relief washed over her, but it was short-lived. "They'll come looking," she warned. "Sheriff Thornton is persistent." A shadow crossed Vincent's face at the mention of the sheriff. "Thornton, you say? Nathaniel Thornton?" Lily nodded, watching his reaction carefully. "That explains a few things," Vincent muttered, more to himself than to her. He seemed lost in thought for a moment before refocusing on Lily. "When's the last time you ate, Miss Ainsworth?" The unexpected question caught her off guard. "Yesterday morning," she admitted, suddenly aware of the hollow ache in her stomach. Vincent nodded decisively. "Well, I can't have you fainting in my barn." He gestured toward the open doors. "The house isn't much, but there's hot coffee and breakfast to be had." Lily stared at him in disbelief. "You're not turning me in." Vincent Kane retrieved his rifle and slung it over his shoulder before answering. His eyes met hers, direct and honest. "Miss Ainsworth, I've had my own run-ins with Thornton. I know the kind of man he is." He paused, then added simply, "You can stay." 3 simple words that changed everything. Lily felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them back, unwilling to show more vulnerability than she already had. "Thank you," she whispered. Vincent nodded once, then turned toward the doors. "Come on. Dawn's breaking, and there's work to be done after we eat." Lily followed him out of the barn, stepping into the gentle light of early morning. The landscape that had been hidden by darkness now revealed itself, rolling hills dotted with wildflowers, a small creek winding through the property, and in the distance, mountains standing like ancient guardians against the sky. The cabin she had glimpsed the night before was modest but well-maintained, with a small porch fronting its weathered exterior. A thin column of smoke still rose from the stone chimney, promising warmth within. As they approached, Lily noticed a vegetable garden to one side, rows of crops neatly tended, and a chicken coop where several hens clucked contentedly. It was a self-sufficient homestead, isolated but thriving under Vincent's care. "It's beautiful," she murmured, taking in the peaceful scene. Vincent glanced at her, surprise flickering across his features before he composed himself. "It's not much compared to town living, but it's mine." There was unmistakable pride in his voice. Inside, the cabin was simple but comfortable, a main room that served as both kitchen and living area, with a stone fireplace dominating one wall. A hallway suggested additional rooms beyond. Everything was meticulously clean and organized, defying the bachelor stereotype Lily had expected. "Sit," Vincent instructed, gesturing to a wooden table with 4 chairs. "Rest while I get breakfast going." Too exhausted to argue, Lily sank into a chair, watching as Vincent moved about the kitchen with surprising efficiency. He stoked the fire in the cast iron stove, then set a coffee pot to boil before retrieving eggs, bacon, and a loaf of bread. "You know your way around a kitchen," Lily observed, unable to keep the surprise from her voice. Vincent cracked eggs into a bowl with practiced ease. "Been on my own since I was 17, he explained. "Man learns to cook or starves out here." Lily nodded, understanding all too well the necessity of self-reliance. She had been orphaned at 16 when influenza took both her parents within a week of each other. For the past 6 years, she had supported herself as a seamstress in Willow Creek, living in a small room above the general store until events had forced her to flee. The aroma of frying bacon soon filled the cabin, making Lily's stomach growl audibly. Vincent smiled slightly at the sound but made no comment as he continued preparing their meal. Finally, he set 2 plates on the table: eggs, bacon, and thick slices of bread slathered with butter and honey along with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. "Eat," he encouraged, taking a seat across from her. "Then you can tell me what really brought you to my barn in the middle of the night." Lily didn't need to be told twice. She ate with the fervor of someone who hadn't seen a proper meal in days, savoring each bite. The food was simple but delicious, and the coffee strong and restorative. When she had finished, she wrapped her hands around the warm mug and met Vincent's patient gaze. "Sheriff Thornton asked me to marry him 3 weeks ago," she began, her voice steady despite the painful memories. "When I refused, he didn't take it well." Vincent's expression darkened, but he remained silent, allowing her to continue. 2 days ago, some of the town's cattle fell ill. People were frightened, looking for someone to blame." Lily took a deep breath. "Thornton suggested that I had bewitched them. Said he had seen me gathering strange herbs at night." "Which accusations?" Vincent muttered, shaking his head. "I thought we'd moved beyond such nonsense." "Apparently not in Willow Creek," Lily replied bitterly. "It didn't matter that the herbs were for teas and remedies I learned from my mother. It didn't matter that I've never harmed anyone. Once Thornton planted the seed, it grew like wildfire." Vincent's jaw tightened. "And the good people of Willow Creek were ready with torches and pitchforks, I imagine." Lily nodded grimly. "They came for me last night. I barely escaped through my back window before they broke down my door." She shuddered at the memory. "I ran until I couldn't run anymore. That's when I found your barn." Vincent was quiet for a long moment, digesting her story. Finally, he asked, "Do you have family elsewhere?" "Someone you can go to," Lily shook her head. "No one. My parents died years ago, and I have no siblings or relatives that I know of." Another silence fell between them, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the distant call of a rooster. "Well," Vincent said at last, pushing back from the table, "I meant what I said. You can stay here until you figure out your next steps." He stood, collecting their empty plates. "But I should warn you, I run this place alone, and there's always work to be done. I can't afford to feed idle hands." Relief flooded through Lily. "I'm no stranger to hard work, Mr. Kane. I can cook, clean, sew, tend a garden, whatever you need." A hint of amusement touched his eyes. "Vincent," he corrected. "If you're staying under my roof, Mr. Kane sounds too formal." "Vincent," Lily repeated, testing the name, "and please call me Lily." He nodded, then glanced out the window at the brightening day. "I need to tend to the horses and check the fence line on the north pasture. You look like you could use more rest." He pointed toward the hallway. "Spare room's first door on the right. Clean linens in the chest at the foot of the bed." Lily stood, suddenly overwhelmed by his kindness. "I don't know how to thank you." Vincent regarded her solemnly. "Don't thank me yet. Life out here isn't easy, and if Thornton's as determined as you say, your troubles may not be over." He reached for his hat hanging by the door. "But for now, get some sleep. We'll figure out the rest later." With that, he was gone, leaving Lily alone in the quiet cabin. She made her way to the spare room, finding it simple but clean: a narrow bed with an iron frame, a small dresser, and a window overlooking the rolling landscape. True to Vincent's word, the chest contained fresh linens, which she used to make up the bed. As exhaustion claimed her once more, Lily's last thoughts were of the taciturn cowboy who had offered sanctuary when she needed it most. There was more to Vincent Kane than met the eye, she was certain. And despite the danger still looming, for the first time in days, Lily fell asleep feeling safe. The next few days settled into an unexpected rhythm. True to her word, Lily proved herself useful around the homestead. She rose early each morning to prepare breakfast before Vincent headed out to work the land, then spent her days cleaning the cabin, tending the vegetable garden, and caring for the chickens. In the evenings, she prepared dinner, and they ate together in a companionable silence that gradually gave way to conversation. Vincent, she discovered, was 30 years old and had come west after the Civil War, seeking a fresh start away from the devastation that had claimed his family in Virginia. He had worked as a ranch hand for several years before saving enough to purchase this small parcel of land 5 years ago. He raised horses, not many, but quality stock that fetched good prices from those who knew horseflesh. "Why did you never marry?" Lily asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Vincent took a slow sip of coffee before answering. "Never found a woman willing to live this far from civilization," he said with a hint of a smile. "Or maybe I never looked hard enough." Lily nodded, understanding the solitude of his choice. "It's peaceful here," she observed. "I can see why you choose this life. And you?" Vincent asked, turning the question back on her. "No suitors in Willow Creek before Thornton." Lily gazed out at the darkening landscape. "There were a few," she admitted. "But after my parents died, I was focused on survival. Romance seemed frivolous." Vincent made a non-committal sound, neither agreeing nor disagreeing. "Life's too short not to find some joy in it," he said after a moment, surprising her with the philosophical turn. As days turned into a week, Lily found herself watching Vincent when he wasn't looking, noting the gentle way he handled his horses, the quiet competence with which he approached every task, the rare but transformative smile that softened his weathered features. He was nothing like the men she had known in Willow Creek. There was a depth to him, a thoughtfulness that intrigued her. For his part, Vincent seemed increasingly comfortable with her presence. His initial reserve gradually melted, revealing a dry wit and unexpected kindness. He began teaching her about the homestead, how to recognize when the garden needed water, which wild plants were edible, how to approach the more skittish of his horses. "You've got a way with animals," he remarked one afternoon as they worked together in the corral, where Lily was helping him train a young mare. "They trust you." Lily smiled, stroking the horse's velvety nose. "My father always said animals can sense a person's true nature." "Smart man, your father," Vincent replied, his eyes lingering on her face a moment longer than necessary before he turned back to his work. On the 10th day of Lily's stay, the peaceful routine they had established was shattered. Vincent had ridden out at dawn to check on a distant part of his property, leaving Lily to handle the morning chores. She was hanging laundry on the line behind the cabin when she heard the approaching hoofbeats. Her first thought was that Vincent had returned early, but as she peered around the corner of the cabin, her blood turned to ice. 3 riders were approaching from the direction of Willow Creek, and though they were still too distant to identify clearly, the glint of a sheriff's badge on the lead rider's chest told her all she needed to know. Thornton had found her. Panic seized Lily as she frantically considered her options. She could run, but where? The nearest neighbor was miles away, and the open terrain offered little cover. The barn was too obvious a hiding place, and the cabin would be the first place they searched. As the riders drew closer, Lily made her decision. She darted into the cabin, grabbed a rifle that Vincent kept mounted above the fireplace, and hurried to the root cellar accessed through a trapdoor in the kitchen floor. It wasn't ideal, but it was the only hiding place that might escape immediate notice. She descended the ladder into the cool darkness below, pulling the trapdoor closed above her. The cellar was small but neat, with shelves of preserved foods and a small air vent that provided both ventilation and a limited view of the yard. Lily's heart pounded as she heard the riders arrive, their horses whinnying as they came to a stop. Male voices drifted through the vent, Thornton's unmistakable drawl among them. "Looks like Kane's not home," one voice observed. "Search the place anyway," Thornton commanded. "The witch has to be somewhere." Footsteps crunched on gravel as the men dismounted. Lily gripped the rifle tighter, her palms slick with sweat. She had never fired a gun in her life but would not be taken without a fight. The cabin door creaked open, and heavy boots thumped across the wooden floor above her head. Drawers were opened and closed, furniture moved. Lily held her breath, praying the trapdoor wouldn't catch their attention. "Nothing in here, Sheriff," a voice called after several minutes of searching. "Check the barn," Thornton ordered, his voice moving outside again. Lily exhaled slowly, but her relief was premature. Just as the footsteps receded, a new sound caught her attention, the distant thunder of approaching hooves. Vincent was returning through the narrow vent. She watched in horror as Vincent rode into view, pulling his horse to an abrupt halt at the sight of the three strangers on his property. Even from a distance, she could see him straighten in the saddle, his posture alert and wary. "Sheriff Thornton," Vincent's voice carried clearly in the still air. "To what do I owe this unexpected visit?" Thornton stepped forward, thumbs hooked in his belt near his holster, a subtle but clear threat. "Kane, been a while." "Not long enough," Vincent replied coolly, dismounting but keeping his horse between himself and the three men. "You're trespassing on private property." Thornton chuckled, the sound devoid of humor. "Now, is that any way to greet an old acquaintance, especially when I'm here on official business?" Vincent's hand rested casually near his own sidearm. "What business would that be?" "I'm looking for a fugitive," Thornton stated. "Young woman, auburn hair, green eyes, name's Lily Ainsworth. She's wanted for witchcraft and poisoning livestock in Willow Creek." "Witchcraft," Vincent repeated, his tone making it clear what he thought of such accusations. "Seems like Willow Creek is stuck in the last century." Thornton's face darkened. "You always did have a smart mouth, Kane. Now, have you seen her or not?" Lily held her breath, the rifle heavy in her hands as she waited for Vincent's response. "Can't say that I have," Vincent answered evenly. "Don't get many visitors out this way." One of Thornton's deputies emerged from the barn. "Nothing in there, Sheriff, just horses and tack." Thornton's eyes narrowed as he studied Vincent. "You wouldn't lie to an officer of the law, would you, Kane? That could get a man in serious trouble." "I'm well aware of the law, Thornton," Vincent replied, his voice hardening. "And I know my rights. You've searched my property without permission or warrant. Now I'm asking you to leave." The tension between the two men was palpable, stretching like a taut wire ready to snap. Lily's finger hovered near the rifle's trigger, though she prayed she wouldn't need to use it. After what seemed like an eternity, Thornton took a step back. "We'll be going, for now." His gaze swept the homestead once more. "But I'll be back, Kane. That woman's dangerous, and harboring her would make you an accessory." "Good day, Sheriff," Vincent said firmly, standing his ground with visible reluctance. Thornton and his deputies mounted their horses. "Keep your eyes open," Thornton called as they prepared to ride away. "She's clever and not to be trusted. If you see her, send word immediately." Vincent nodded noncommittally, watching as the three men rode off in the direction they had come. Even after they disappeared from sight, he remained motionless, scanning the horizon to ensure they were truly gone. Only when he was certain did he call out, "Lily, you can come out now." For a moment, Lily couldn't move, her limbs frozen with residual fear. Then, slowly, she pushed open the trapdoor and climbed out of the root cellar, still clutching the rifle. Vincent's eyes widened slightly at the sight of her armed, but he made no comment as she carefully set the weapon aside. "Are you all right?" he asked, crossing the room to stand before her. Lily nodded, though she was trembling. "I heard them coming and hid. I didn't know what else to do." "You did exactly right," Vincent assured her, his gaze searching her face. "But they'll be back. Thornton's not the type to give up easily." "I'm so sorry," Lily whispered, guilt washing over her. "I've brought trouble to your door." Vincent surprised her by taking her hands in his calloused fingers warm against her cold ones. "You have nothing to apologize for," he said firmly. "Thornton is the one in the wrong, not you." The sincerity in his eyes made Lily's heart skip a beat. In that moment, something shifted between them, a recognition of something deeper than mere hospitality or gratitude. Vincent seemed to feel it too, for he cleared his throat and released her hands, though reluctantly. "We need to make plans," he said, his voice gruff. "Thornton won't give up, and next time he might bring more men or a warrant." "I should leave," Lily said immediately. "Go somewhere far from here. I can't put you at risk any longer." Vincent shook his head. "And go where? With what money? How would you survive?" He ran a hand through his hair, thinking, "No, running isn't the answer. We need to deal with this directly." "How?" Lily asked, desperation edging her voice. "It's my word against the sheriff's. No one in Willow Creek will stand against him." Vincent's expression turned thoughtful. "Maybe not in Willow Creek," he agreed. "But Silver Springs is only a day's ride from here. They have a proper court, and Judge Harrison is known to be fair. If we could get your case heard there instead." Hope flickered in Lily's chest, but uncertainty quickly doused it. On what grounds? "Thornton has jurisdiction in Willow Creek." "On the grounds that you can't get a fair trial there," Vincent explained, "and because there's evidence of Thornton's corruption, evidence I've been gathering for years." Lily stared at him in shock. "What? Why would you do that?" A shadow crossed Vincent's face. "Thornton and I have history," he said grimly. 5 years ago, he tried to force me off this land, claimed he had a buyer willing to pay top dollar. When I refused to sell, accidents started happening, fences cut, a mysterious fire in my barn." "That's terrible," Lily breathed. Vincent nodded. "I could never prove it was him, but I started keeping records of everything, dates, times, witnesses when possible, and I wasn't the only one he's tried to intimidate. I've collected statements from others who have had similar experiences." "You think it would be enough?" Lily asked, hardly daring to hope. "With your testimony about his marriage proposal and subsequent accusations?" "Yes," Vincent said firmly, "but we'd need to move quickly before he can gather more support for his witch hunt." Lily took a deep breath, drawing strength from Vincent's confidence. "When do we leave for Silver Springs?" "Tomorrow at first light," he decided. "We'll take the mountain trail. It's longer but less traveled. Thornton won't expect us to head in that direction." As they spent the rest of the day preparing for the journey, Lily was struck by the realization that Vincent was risking everything to help her his home, his reputation, possibly even his life if Thornton resorted to violence. The knowledge filled her with both gratitude and something deeper, something she hesitated to name even in the privacy of her own thoughts. That night, as they sat by the fire making final preparations, Lily found the courage to ask the question that had been nagging at her. "Why are you doing this for me? You barely know me." Vincent looked up from the map he had been studying, his expression serious. "I know enough," he said simply. "I know you're honest and hardworking. I know you didn't deserve what happened to you." He paused, then added more softly, "And I know that in the short time you've been here, this place has felt more like a home than it ever did before." The admission hung in the air between them, fraught with unspoken implications. Lily felt her cheeks warm, not from the fire's heat but from the intensity in Vincent's gaze. "It's felt that way to me too," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. Vincent reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "Then it's worth fighting for," he said, the conviction in his voice leaving no room for doubt. In that moment, Lily knew that whatever happened in Silver Springs, whatever challenges lay ahead, she was no longer facing them alone, and that knowledge made all the difference. Dawn broke clear and cold the next morning as Vincent and Lily prepared to depart. They had packed lightly only essential supplies, food for several days, and the documents Vincent believed would help their case. Lily wore borrowed clothes, a pair of Vincent's trousers altered hastily to fit her smaller frame, a shirt, and a leather vest that offered some protection against the early morning chill. "It's not proper ladies' attire," Vincent had apologized as he handed her the clothes the night before, "but it's more practical for riding in the mountains." Lily had accepted them gratefully, caring little for propriety when survival was at stake. Now, As they saddled the horses Midnight for Vincent and a gentle mare named Daisy for Lily, there was a tension in the air, a sense of crossing a threshold from which there would be no return. "We'll follow the creek north for a few miles," Vincent explained as they mounted, "then cut east through the high pass. It's rougher terrain, but it'll keep us out of sight from the main trails." Lily nodded, adjusting her seat in the saddle. Though not an experienced rider, she had learned the basics over the past week under Vincent's patient instruction. "How long until we reach Silver Springs?" "If we push hard, we can make it by nightfall tomorrow," Vincent replied, scanning the horizon one last time before guiding Midnight away from the homestead. "But we'll need to be careful. Thornton knows these lands too." They rode in silence for the first few hours, the rhythm of the horses' hooves and the occasional call of a bird the only sounds breaking the stillness of the morning. As the sun climbed higher, the landscape changed, the rolling grasslands giving way to more rugged terrain as they approached the foothills. Vincent kept a vigilant watch, frequently stopping to listen and check their back trail. His caution proved warranted when, around midday, he suddenly raised a hand for Lily to halt. "Riders," he murmured, pointing to a distant ridge where dust clouds suggested movement. Lily's heart leaped to her throat. "Thornton." "Can't tell from here," Vincent replied grimly, "but we can't take chances. This way." He led them into a densely wooded area, the trees providing cover as they pushed deeper into the wilderness. The going was slower now, the trail narrowing until they were forced to ride single file through the underbrush. By late afternoon, they had climbed high enough to look back over the valley below. There was no sign of pursuit, but Vincent remained cautious. "We'll make camp here," he decided as they reached a small clearing sheltered by overhanging rocks. "No fire tonight, can't risk the smoke being seen." They tended to the horses first, then laid out their bedrolls on opposite sides of the clearing. Dinner was a cold meal of jerky, hard biscuits, and dried fruit, washed down with water from a nearby spring. As twilight deepened into night, the temperature dropped sharply. Lily pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders, trying not to shiver visibly. Vincent noticed anyway. "Cold?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "A little," she admitted. "I'm not used to mountain nights." Without hesitation, Vincent rose and moved his bedroll closer to hers. "Body heat helps," he explained matter-of-factly, though there was a hint of uncertainty in his eyes, as if worried she might misinterpret the gesture. Lily appreciated both his concern and his respect. "Thank you," she said simply, grateful for his proximity as the night air grew increasingly frigid. They lay side by side beneath the vast canopy of stars, close enough to share warmth but not touching, each lost in their own thoughts about what the next day might bring. "Vincent," Lily whispered after a long silence. What if it doesn't work? What if Judge Harrison doesn't believe us?" Vincent turned his head to look at her, his profile silvered by moonlight. "Then we keep going," he said firmly. "West, maybe, California or Oregon. Somewhere Thornton's reach doesn't extend." The implication that he would accompany her, regardless of the outcome, warmed Lily more than any blanket could. "You would leave your home. For me," Vincent was quiet for a moment before answering. "A home is more than land and buildings, Lily. I've learned that since you arrived." The simple honesty of his words touched something deep within her. Impulsively, she reached out, finding his hand in the darkness and lacing her fingers through his. Vincent's breath caught audibly, but he didn't pull away. Instead, his fingers tightened around hers, a silent affirmation of feelings neither was quite ready to voice. They fell asleep that way, hands intertwined between them, a tentative bridge across the space that separated their bodies but not their hearts. Morning came too soon, the first light of dawn filtering through the trees as they roused themselves and prepared to continue their journey. There was a new awareness between them, a shy recognition of the boundary they had crossed the night before. As they rode deeper into the mountains, the trail grew more challenging, steep switchbacks, narrow passes, and rocky terrain that required all their concentration. By midday, they had reached the highest point of their journey, a windswept ridge that offered a panoramic view of the surrounding wilderness. There, Vincent pointed toward the east, where a distant valley gleamed in the sunlight. Silver Springs, we're making good time. Lily smiled, relief and hope mingling as she gazed at their destination. The worst seemed behind them until a sharp crack split the air and a bullet whizzed past her head to embed itself in a nearby tree. "Get down," Vincent shouted, already sliding from his saddle and pulling Lily with him. They crouched behind a rocky outcropping as more shots rang out, bullets pinging off stone and splintering wood around them. "Thornton?" Lily gasped, fear constricting her throat. Vincent nodded grimly, peering carefully around their shelter. "Him and 2 others, they must have guessed our route." "How did they get ahead of us?" Lily wondered, pressing herself against the rocks as another volley of bullets struck nearby. "Must have ridden through the night," Vincent surmised. "Or known a shortcut I didn't." He reached for his rifle, checking that it was loaded. "Stay here," he instructed. "I'm going to work my way around to flank them." "No," Lily clutched his arm. "They'll kill you." Vincent's expression softened for a moment as he looked at her. "They'll kill us both if I don't do something," he countered gently. "I won't let that happen." Before she could argue further, he was gone, moving swiftly and silently through the underbrush at the edge of the ridge. Lily pressed herself against the rocks, heart pounding as she waited. The shooting had stopped, an eerie silence falling over the mountain pass. Then, from somewhere to her left, a single shot rang out, followed by a cry of pain. More gunfire erupted, this time from multiple directions. Lily closed her eyes, praying fervently for Vincent's safety as the deadly exchange continued. After what seemed an eternity but was probably only minutes, silence fell once more. Lily held her breath, straining to hear any sound that might indicate who had prevailed. "Lily," Vincent's voice calling her name, she nearly collapsed with relief. "Here." She called back, rising cautiously from her hiding place. Vincent emerged from the trees, his face streaked with dirt and a small cut bleeding on his cheek, but otherwise unharmed. "It's safe now," he assured her, crossing the distance between them quickly. "Thornton and 1 deputy are retreating. The other one's wounded but will live." Lily threw her arms around him, unable to contain her relief. Vincent returned the embrace fiercely, his heartbeat strong and steady against her cheek. "We need to move," he said after a moment, reluctantly releasing her. "They'll regroup and come after us again." They retrieved their horses, which had fortunately not strayed far, and continued their journey at a faster pace, pushing the animals as much as they dared on the treacherous mountain paths. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, the trail finally widened and began to slope downward. They had crossed the mountains and were now descending into the valley where Silver Springs awaited. "We'll make it before dark," Vincent encouraged as they paused to rest the horses by a small stream. "Judge Harrison keeps late hours. We can see him tonight." Lily nodded, too exhausted for words. The day's events, the ambush, the gunfight, the relentless pace of their escape had drained her completely. Vincent studied her face with concern. "Are you all right?" "Just tired," she assured him, mustering a smile, "and worried about you." She reached up to touch the cut on his cheek, now dried but still angry-looking. Vincent caught her hand, turning it to press a kiss to her palm, a gesture so tender and unexpected that Lily's breath caught in her throat. "I'm fine," he murmured against her skin. "Nothing that won't heal." The moment was interrupted by the distant sound of hoofbeats, many of them, approaching from the direction they had come. "Thornton's brought reinforcements," Vincent said grimly, helping Lily quickly back into the saddle. "We need to run for it." They urged their horses forward, abandoning caution for speed as they raced down the mountain trail toward Silver Springs. The sounds of pursuit grew louder behind them, spurring them to push their mounts even harder. As they rounded a bend in the trail, Silver Springs came into view below a proper town with wooden buildings lining a main street, a church steeple rising above the rooftops, and the glint of the actual Silver Springs that had given the settlement its name. "Almost there," Vincent called encouragingly. They thundered down the final stretch of trail and onto the outskirts of town just as the sun dipped below the horizon. Behind them, their pursuers were visible now, Thornton at the lead of at least 6 men, all armed and closing the distance rapidly. Vincent led them straight down the main street, past startled townspeople who scrambled to get out of their way, toward a large building with a sign identifying it as the courthouse. Outside, a tall man in a black coat was just locking the door, Judge Harrison. Vincent shouted, bringing midnight to a sliding halt and dismounting in one fluid motion. He helped Lily down as the distinguished-looking older man turned in surprise. "Vincent Kane?" the judge asked, recognition and confusion mingling in his expression. "What in God's name? We need your help, Your Honor," Vincent interrupted urgently, gesturing toward the approaching riders. "Sheriff Thornton of Willow Creek is pursuing this woman on false charges. We're seeking your protection and a fair hearing." Judge Harrison's shrewd eyes took in the situation, quickly Lily's exhausted but determined stance, Vincent's protective posture beside her, and the armed men rapidly approaching. "Inside," he decided, unlocking the courthouse door. "Quickly now." They hurried inside just as Thornton and his men reached the building. The judge locked the door behind them, then led them through to his chambers at the back of the courthouse. "Now," he said calmly, settling behind his desk, "explain yourselves and be quick about it." "Thornton will be demanding entry any moment." Vincent nodded, then produced the packet of documents he had carried all this way. "Your Honor, I've been documenting Sheriff Thornton's corruption and abuses of power for years," he began, spreading the papers on the desk. "But his latest action crosses every line. He has accused Miss Ainsworth here of witchcraft, yes, witchcraft in 1878 because she refused his marriage proposal." Judge Harrison's eyebrows rose as he examined the documents. "These are serious allegations, Mr. Kane." "And true," Lily interjected firmly. "Sheriff Thornton has used his position to terrorize those who oppose him. When I refused his advances, he turned the town against me with superstitious nonsense." A loud pounding on the courthouse door punctuated her words. "Harrison." Thornton's voice bellowed. "Open up. I'm here on official business." The judge held up a hand for silence, his expression grave as he continued to read through Vincent's evidence. After what seemed an eternity, he looked up. "This is enough to warrant a formal investigation," he decided. "I'll issue a stay on any proceedings against Miss Ainsworth until a proper hearing can be conducted." He reached for a piece of paper and began writing rapidly. "In the meantime, Mr. Kane, I suggest you and Miss Ainsworth remain in Silver Springs under my protection." "Thank you, Your Honor," Vincent said fervently, relief evident in his voice. Judge Harrison finished writing and affixed his seal to the document. "Don't thank me yet," he cautioned. "Thornton has friends in high places. This won't be easy." The pounding on the door grew more insistent. With a sigh, the judge rose. "Wait here, I'll deal with our impatient sheriff." Left alone in the judge's chambers, Lily turned to Vincent, emotion overwhelming her. "You did it," she whispered. "You saved me." Vincent shook his head, taking her hands in his. "We did it together," he corrected gently, "and it's just the beginning. There will be a hearing, testimony. But we have a chance now," Lily insisted. "A real chance for justice." She looked up at him, her heart in her eyes. "I don't know how I can ever repay you for what you've risked for me." Vincent's gaze softened as he reached up to brush a strand of hair from her face. "Lily," he murmured, "don't you know by now, I didn't do this expecting repayment." "Then why?" she asked, though she hoped she knew the answer. Instead of replying with words, Vincent lowered his head slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. When she didn't, his lips met hers in a kiss so tender it brought tears to her eyes. Lily responded instinctively, her hands moving to his shoulders as she rose on tiptoe to deepen the connection between them. When they finally parted, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "That's why," he whispered. Before Lily could respond, the door opened and Judge Harrison returned, his expression grim but satisfied. "Thornton's not happy," he reported, "but he's been made to understand that this is now under my jurisdiction. He and his men will be staying at the hotel in town under the watchful eye of our local sheriff until the hearing." "When will that be?" Vincent asked, his arm still protectively around Lily's waist. 3 days from now," the judge replied. "I've sent for a circuit prosecutor who specializes in cases of official misconduct. He should arrive by then." He eyed them both thoughtfully. In the meantime, my sister runs a boarding house on Maple Street. She'll have rooms for you both. Thank you, Your Honor, Lily said sincerely. For everything, the judge nodded, his stern features softening slightly. Justice shouldn't be a luxury, Miss Ainsworth. It should be a right. With those words echoing in their minds, Vincent and Lily left the courthouse through a back entrance, avoiding Thornton and his men who lingered sullenly on the main street. Judge Harrison's sister, Mrs. Eleanor Whitman, proved to be as fair-minded as her brother, welcoming them warmly to her establishment despite their disheveled appearance and unusual circumstances. "Any friend of my brother's is welcome here," she assured them, showing them to adjacent rooms on the second floor. "Supper's at 6, and don't worry about Thornton or his thugs. This house has stood against worse threats." Left alone in her room, a clean, comfortable space with a real bed and even a small bathtub behind a screen, Lily was overcome by the events of the past 2 days. She sank onto the edge of the bed, emotions she had been holding at bay finally breaking free in a flood of tears. A soft knock at the connecting door between her room and Vincent's interrupted her release. Hastily wiping her eyes, she called, "Yes." Vincent opened the door, his concern evident as he took in her tear-stained face. "Lily, what's wrong?" She shook her head, unable to articulate the complex mix of relief, fear, gratitude, and something deeper that overwhelmed her. Vincent crossed the room in 3 strides, sitting beside her and drawing her into his arms without hesitation. "It's all right," he murmured, stroking her hair as she cried against his shoulder. "You're safe now, we both are." Lily clung to him, drawing strength from his solid presence. "I was so scared," she admitted between sobs. "When the shooting started, I thought I might lose you before I ever had the chance to," she broke off, suddenly self-conscious. Vincent pulled back slightly to look into her eyes. "Chance to what?" he prompted gently. Lily gathered her courage, knowing that after all they had been through together, honesty was the least she owed him. "To tell you that I've fallen in love with you," she whispered. "It happened so quickly, but I've never been more certain of anything." Joy bloomed in Vincent's eyes, transforming his face. "Lily," he breathed, "I've loved you since the moment you stood in my barn, covered in hay but refusing to show fear." He cradled her face in his hands. "I think I was waiting for you without even knowing it." This time when they kissed, it was with the freedom of acknowledged love, a promise exchanged without words but no less binding for its silence. When they finally parted, both were smiling despite the challenges that still lay ahead. "We should rest," Vincent said reluctantly. "Tomorrow will bring its own battles." Lily nodded, though she was loath to see him go. "Will you stay, just until I fall asleep?" she asked, suddenly unwilling to be alone with her thoughts. Vincent hesitated, propriety warring with desire. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Lily affirmed, moving to make space for him on the bed. He settled beside her, both of them fully clothed atop the covers, his arm around her shoulders as she rested her head on his chest. The steady rhythm of his heartbeat soon lulled her into the first peaceful sleep she had known in weeks. The next 3 days passed in a blur of preparation. Judge Harrison arranged for them to meet with Thomas Reed, the circuit prosecutor, a sharp-eyed man with a reputation for tenacity in the face of corruption. Reed interviewed them separately and together, reviewing Vincent's evidence and Lily's testimony with meticulous attention to detail. "It's a strong case," he assured them after the final preparation session, "especially with the additional witnesses who have come forward since your arrival." This had been an unexpected boon upon hearing of the impending hearing. Several Silver Springs residents had approached Judge Harrison with their own stories of Thornton's abuses of power. It seemed the sheriff's corruption extended beyond Willow Creek. Throughout it all, Vincent remained Lily's steadfast support, his belief in her never wavering. In the evenings, they would walk together through the small town, planning for a future that now seemed possible. "What will you do after the hearing?" Lily asked as they strolled along the bank of the silver-tinged springs that gave the town its name. "Return to your homestead," Vincent took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "That depends," he said carefully. "On what?" His eyes met hers, serious and full of love. "On what you want, Lily, where you want to be." Lily's heart swelled at the implication. "I want to be with you," she said simply. "Whether that's on your land or somewhere new, I don't care, as long as we're together." Vincent's smile was like the breaking of dawn. "Then I have something to ask you," he said, reaching into his pocket. "I bought this today. It's not much," but he opened his hand to reveal a simple silver ring with a small, perfect pearl. "Lily Ainsworth, will you marry me, build a life with me, wherever that may be?" Tears of joy sprang to Lily's eyes as she nodded, too overcome for words. Vincent slipped the ring onto her finger, then sealed their engagement with a kiss that promised a lifetime of love. The day of the hearing dawned clear and bright. The courthouse was packed with spectators, locals curious about the proceedings, witnesses prepared to testify, and Thornton's supporters, fewer in number but vocal in their defense of the sheriff. Thornton himself sat at one table, flanked by a lawyer hastily summoned from the territorial capital. He glared at Lily and Vincent as they entered, his face a mask of barely contained fury. Judge Harrison called the hearing to order with a sharp rap of his gavel. "This court will now hear evidence regarding allegations of misconduct against Sheriff Nathaniel Thornton of Willow Creek," he announced. "Mr. Reed, you may begin." What followed was a systematic dismantling of Thornton's reputation and authority. Vincent's careful documentation, Lily's clear and compelling testimony, and the statements of additional witnesses painted a damning picture of a man who had abused his power for personal gain and vengeance. Thornton's defense was weak, relying heavily on his position and assertions that the witnesses were all biased against him for personal reasons. When it was his turn to testify, his temper got the better of him, leading to an outburst that had Judge Harrison threatening to hold him in contempt. By late afternoon, the outcome was clear. Judge Harrison delivered his ruling with the gravity the situation demanded. "Based on the evidence presented, I find sufficient cause to remove Nathaniel Thornton from the office of Sheriff of Willow Creek, effective immediately," he declared. "Furthermore, I am ordering a full investigation into all allegations of corruption, with criminal charges to follow as warranted." A murmur ran through the courtroom as the judge continued. "As for the accusations against Miss Lily Ainsworth, they are dismissed in their entirety as being without merit or legal basis." He fixed Thornton with a stern gaze. "This court finds that these charges were brought maliciously and with intent to harm. Miss Ainsworth is hereby cleared of all wrongdoing." Lily sagged against Vincent in relief as the judge concluded the proceedings. "This hearing is adjourned." As they left the courthouse, stepping into the golden light of late afternoon, Lily felt as though a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "It's over," she breathed, hardly able to believe it. Vincent squeezed her hand. "A new beginning," he corrected gently, "for both of us." They were married 2 days later in Silver Spring's small church, with Judge Harrison giving the bride away and Mrs. Whitman serving as witness. The ceremony was simple but deeply meaningful, a public affirmation of the love that had grown between them against all odds. As they exchanged vows, Lily thought back to that desperate night when she had fled Willow Creek, never imagining that her darkest hour would lead her to such happiness. From hiding in a stranger's barn to becoming his wife, it seemed like a dream, yet the man standing before her, promising to love and cherish her for all his days, was wonderfully, blessedly real. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister declared. "You may kiss your bride." Vincent did so with reverence and passion, sealing their union as the small gathering applauded. They returned to Vincent's homestead, their homestead now, a week later, after ensuring that Thornton would face justice for his crimes. The cabin that had once been merely Vincent's shelter was transformed by their shared presence into a true home, filled with laughter and love. Over the years that followed, they expanded the homestead, adding rooms to the cabin as their family grew, first with the birth of their daughter, Emma, and 2 years later, their son, James. Vincent's horse breeding business flourished under their joint care, earning a reputation that brought buyers from as far away as St. Louis, Lily never forgot the night she had run from Willow Creek, terrified and alone. Sometimes, on quiet evenings as she watched Vincent teaching their children to ride or telling them stories by the fireplace, she would remember his words when he found her hiding in his barn. "You can stay." 3 simple words that had changed everything, words that had led to a lifetime of love, security, and happiness she had never dared to dream possible. From those words had grown a family, a home, and a love story that would be told for generations to come. And in the end, wasn't that what the wild frontier was truly about? Not just survival against the elements or the lawless, but finding one's place in the world, finding home in another person's heart. For Lily and Vincent Kane, their greatest adventure hadn't been fleeing a corrupt sheriff or starting anew in the wilderness. It had been the journey they embarked upon together, day by day, building a life filled with love, respect, and unbreakable bonds, a journey that had begun with a desperate flight, a hidden refuge, and a cowboy's simple offer of sanctuary that became the foundation for a lifetime of happiness.